The Toronto Raptors had a breakthrough season, returning to the playoffs for the first time in 4 years. And today, I want to do a season review. First, I'm going to share 3 things that I loved about the Raptors this year, and then I'm going to share 3 things that I hated. Next, I'm going to go through my player grades for the entire team, and then I'm going to share who I think we need to move on from next year. A lot of optimism. I'm excited to get into this. This is The Morning Whistle. My name is Aaron Nerone. While I know the Raptors weren't able to close out the series against the Cavs, and while they did ultimately show some significant weaknesses in their roster, I really enjoyed this season. I thought it was fun, it was refreshing to see a winning team, and I really enjoyed getting to see some of our players step up. Here are 3 things that I loved about this season. Number 1 was Brandon Ingram's scoring prowess. And look, I know it didn't end well for BI in the playoffs. He struggled through the first 5 games of the Cavs series and eventually had to leave with a heel injury. But in the regular season, Brandon Ingram provided this team with a boost that we had not seen since Kawhi joined the Lowry-era Raptors, and he had a huge impact. He took responsibility for us to get buckets in key moments. He found ways to get off his shot, and I love the fact that he seemed to always be inventing ways to get to his spot. He single-handedly turned us from a lottery team to a playoff team. Second was the Raptors' balanced scoring. And for much of the season, the Raptors had 3 players averaging at least 19 points a game: Barrett, Ingram, and Barnes until the end of the season. And we ended the year with at least 4 players averaging 16 points a game. And when BI, Scotty, Barrett, and IQ were all on the court together, it was really hard for other teams to double us or game plan because you never knew who was going to be shooting. RJ was often the guy on the floor getting the least ball touches, and he was able to sneak to the basket and get shots off. IQ was shooting. Scotty, again, was also falling under the radar. And while we didn't get to see this in the playoffs, it was really fun to see a diverse attack. And it was a reminder that you don't necessarily need a 25-point-per-game scorer to win. Last, the heart of our young players. This team faced some adversity late in the season. A compromised Jakob Poeltl, a hurting Brandon Ingram, and an absent IQ. And yet, rather than fold, these guys, the next guys up, battled. Jamal Shed and Jacoby Walter took on big minutes in the playoffs, and they hustled like dogs, showing defensive maturity well beyond their years. CMB just kept attacking the bucket, unafraid of the bigger Cleveland bigs. Barrett demanded the responsibility of Brandon Ingram, and Scotty Barnes just said, "Don't worry, guys, I got this." That was everything that you wanted to see from this team. Now, there were some things that I didn't like about this group, and there were some really sad things to see this year. Number 1 was Gradey Dick's demise. After starting every game he played in the previous season and averaging 14 points a game, Gradey was supposed to be our key player coming off the bench this season. Instead, he regressed badly. His shooting remained inconsistent, and without the ball in his hands, he often drifted to the sidelines. He remained a defensive liability, but worse, it was sad to see him constantly get outworked by someone like Jamison Battle. Again, considering he was supposed to be our 6th man, he was relegated to being the 11th man in the playoffs. Next was the Raptors' third quarter struggles. Of all the games I attended this season, there was one usual pattern, and that was poor third quarters. It was really rare that we had a strong, consistent, dominant third frame. Either we didn't start the quarter well like we saw in Game 7 of the postseason, or we would hit a plateau in the middle of the third where this team would just stop scoring. This is the biggest thing that Darko's going to need to clean up next year. Teams cannot come to Scotiabank Arena and play the Raptors and think that they can go vintage Golden State Warriors on us. That just has to change. And then the last thing that I really hated to see, and this might be controversial, but I didn't love to see a very tepid Scotiabank Arena. So I went to 10 Raptors games this year throughout the season, including one in the playoffs. And I saw a big contrast in the crowd to the Lowry and DeRozan era Raptors and to also the Siakam Van Vliet eras. I often felt the arena was quiet, timid, and yes, at times too corporate, specifically in the lower bowl. I remember when coming to the Raptors games used to be the thing, and it felt at times like it was becoming Maple Leafs 2.0. Maybe not the suit so much, but just a lack of enthusiasm. And I get it, the team has struggled over the last few years, but I hope with this season, we see our fan base turn up again and go hard every single game. So with that, I now want to do our Toronto Raptors player grades. So we're going to go through every Raptor who played at least 45 games this season. We're going to rate them on a scale of A to D, and we're going to go in order of minutes played. Starting off then, we have Scottie Barnes, and I give Scottie an A-. If you look at the stats from this year to the year prior, you won't see too many differences. But make no mistake about it, Scottie Barnes improved significantly. And of course, his playoff performance caught eyes. For me, Scottie does everything. He averaged 18 points, 7.5 rebounds, 6 assists, 1.5 steals, 1.5 blocks. And his free throw shooting improved to above 80%, and his field goal shooting was also above 50%. And in the playoffs, he showed he could create shots for himself. He showed that he could play make without IQ, and at times he looked like LeBron out there. You know, next season, if he can take the next step when it comes to finishing some of those mid-range jumpers when he's forcing it a lot more, I have no doubt he will be the superstar we know he can be. Next, we have Brandon Ingram, and I'm giving him a B. Now, fair play to BI. He improved this team dramatically, and he did what he was brought in to do, score. He played 77 regular season games, led the team in scoring. He was pretty efficient shooting .477, and I just loved his ability to just pull to the elbow and get his shot off. Now, there were some reasons I bumped his score down. His three-point shooting was very, very inconsistent. And then, of course, in the playoffs, I get he had an injury, but he really struggled. I do think that there's a player here who can complement Scottie really well, but he'll need to be more in sync with our half-court offense. If he can do that, I do expect that this team can further improve. Emmanuel Quickley's next up, surprisingly, third in minutes played on the team, and I give him a B-. He played 70 games, which is probably more than a lot of people think. But the main problem when you think of IQ is his health. He only played 33 games last season, and then this season, he basically missed everything down the stretch. And the most important thing in this game is availability, and he didn't have it when it mattered. Of course, he was really solid when he played. He's our best three-point shooter and brings a speed on the court that I hadn't seen since TJ Ford. And he can really change the dynamic of the game with that speed. The thing for me, though, that I'm wondering is, with these injuries, is he going to be able to maintain that pace of play? I don't know. And truthfully, I will say that if there is someone who would be willing to take a gamble on him for his speed, shooting, and ability to handle the rock, I would look to make that move so that we could re-sign RJ Barrett. But if he does stay, he needs to put up when it matters. Jamal Shead, B. So Jamal Shead brings a ton. He's a very capable passer of the ball, a good game manager and floor general. And I thought he did a really good job this season of managing the floor when IQ and Scottie Barnes were off the court. And he's really someone that you can trust to handle the rock. His defensive game, I mean, man, he was a hound. Ask James Harden what you think. But the big limitation with him, of course, is his finishing. He's slightly below average behind the arc, which is a big problem when you're under 6 feet tall and not particularly adept at finishing around the rim. And that's going to limit his upside. I really don't think he is a starting caliber point guard unless he can improve his shooting. But the good news for the Raptors, I think he fits into our defensive structure like a glove. And backup point guards to me are extremely important. You need someone who can come in, be that floor general, and that's a role I'd be willing to invest in, even if he never tops up as a starter. Next, we have Sandro Mamukelashvili. Mamu instantly became a fan favorite. And look, if we were just going off of the regular season, I would have given him an A-. He was our best player coming off the bench. He would just come into games and he would just hustle. He'd get the ball and he'd shoot it. He would run up and down the court. He was unafraid when he got the ball to drive to the basket. He was always ready. Ultimately, though, in the playoffs, he was not effective at all, and there didn't seem to be any challenges with his health. His shooting was off, and he struggled defensively against Mobley and Allen, and his lack of rebounding really hurt us. Now, he has an opt-out in his contract. He will surely take that. I have no problem re-upping Mamu with a raise. I think he deserves it, and I do think that we need someone who can come into games and score. Ultimately, though, he will have to pass up money because some team will give him more. Let's see if he wants to do it. Finally, we get to RJ Barrett, who is lower down this list because of games missed. I am still going to give RJ a high score at a B+. Firstly, because some of his injuries were pretty unfortunate, but second, because the team was just way better when he was in the lineup. He was a really strong number 3 option. I mentioned earlier, he would make these cuts to the basket that were really intelligent, feeding off the ball handlers like Scotty and IQ. And he would run the floor really well. I did think his finishing around the basket improved, specifically in the playoffs. And, of course, we all know what he did in the postseason. And here's the deal. He's 1 season away from free agency, and there is talk that he would be the guy who would be moved on to allow for all our other players to stay. He's a guy I want to keep, and I think he can form a good 3-headed monster with Brandon Ingram and Scotty Barnes. If there can be a trade that's found for IQ or Jakob Poeltl to move off their salaries, I'd do it. But if we can't find that, he may unfortunately be traded. Next, we have Jacoby Walter, and I'm giving him a B. His defensive improvement over the year was great to see. We knew he had the length, and we knew he had the hustle to really be a hound. But as a rookie, his propensity to pick up fouls was really frustrating. And yes, it is still there. But boy, did he improve in his ability to be a lockdown defender. And on top of that, he turned into one of the best corner 3 shooters in the league. And that bumped Gradey Dick from our rotation. So yes, he is still inconsistent, and he didn't take the offensive step that maybe we hoped. But he made the defensive step. He showed promise as a future 3-and-D guy in our rotation, and he is still only 21. I really do believe that he's got a future in the number 3 spot in our rotation, and I'm excited to see him continue to develop. Colin Murray-Boyles is a B+. He only played 57 games this season, but boy, was it a good first impression for CMB. He brings defensive tenacity. He runs up and down the court. He had a willingness to shoot threes despite not being totally comfortable there. And he looks like a home run pick. I don't think he's going to be ready to start yet, but I think he can pick up heavy minutes next year at coverage at the 4 and 5. And he really sets the tone for our defensive system and the athleticism that we want to see out of Raptors basketball. He has such a high ceiling, and I'm so excited to see where he goes. We're going to end off with some negative scores. Jakob Poeltl is a C-. And the only reason he's not a D is because he plays an unglamorous, difficult role. But that's the only positive thing I have to say. He again struggled with injuries, playing less than 56 games for the third straight season. His rebound effectiveness really dropped, and it was painful to see him handle the ball like a hot potato in the playoffs. And of course, his contract, which kicks in this season, is even worse. Again, I would trade him. If any deal can be found that's reasonable, you trade him. But I'm not expecting that. I think IQ is a more tradable asset. So we likely need to hold on to him as a backup center. Boy, that's not pretty. And then last, we have Gradey Dick, who I'm giving a C. We talked about Dick earlier. Just massive regression. He's owed $7 million next year. I don't think he has it. He's way too inconsistent as a shooter, and his inability to produce in limited minutes tells me that he cannot be a key part of a winning team. And that's what we're striving to. Time to move on from him. So, to summarize, some really good performances this year. Only a few pure scores, which speaks to the development of this group. And I'm really happy and excited to see young players develop. In terms of what we got to do, again, I think we got to try and retain RJ. And by doing that, we'll have to move either IQ or Pirtle off. And then I also think we need to let Gradey Dick go. In any case, it's not easy with some of the contracts that we have. Bobby Webster's got a lot of work to do, but I am excited to see where we go from here. This is The Morning Whistle. I'm Aaron Nerona.